News 46. Local coverage you can count on.
Good evening once again to Community Viewpoint. I'm John Pollock, your host for the evening, and we've got let's see, were you here last time too? We've got some returnees. Well, everybody was here but me.
Yeah, that's right.
We have on my far left, my far right is Daryl Lacey, Director of the Nye County Nuclear Waste Repository Project Office. Next to him is Levi Kreider, the Geoscience Manager. Donna Lamb, who has many, if you wear hats, you'd have many of them. She's on the Southern Nye County Conservation District with myself. You're on the Water Board.
Nye County Water District.
And a few
Amargosa Conservancy.
Right, and that's a different show too, but we do those shows. We're going to be doing some shows in the future. We're going to do a series of them about water in the area. That's something very important for the Pahrump Valley, and the people that know the most about water are the people from Daryl's office, Levi. There are the technical people, they are the scientists, they are the people that are doing drilling not only here for sampling wells, but they've done that for the early warning drilling wells for the Van Test site. A lot of expertise. So what are some of the issues we're looking at with water here? We have some issues in the paper, the recent paper, about water rights being lost. Is that for a fact or not?
Best I can tell, John, is that's not accurate. The county did give some money to the town of Pahrump for water rights at the fairgrounds. Mm-hmm. The statement was made that they purchased those water rights at the Kellogg property because they had a well there and they could actually put that water to use there. Quick review of the purchases. They were bought in 2007 to 2009, so those water rights are still valid and active, and there's no problem with them. There was, I guess, some confusion that the expectation was to purchase those for the fairgrounds, but at this stage we don't have any wells or anything at the fairgrounds, so when you buy water rights, you have to actually put them on a well somewhere.
Point of diversion. Yeah.
So you have to have a point of diversion, a point of use, those types of things. So the Kellogg property probably was a better spot to put them for the time being.
We do have 2 wells there, right, at the Kellogg?
Yeah, I think the town of Pahrump does.
Yes, yeah. So there'll be a lot of things we'll be looking into in the future. Some of the other issues, you have sampling wells in the area. You monitor the levels. You work with the Desert Research Institute. Do you have a grant with them, or is that part of what you
We have a contract with them to do water sampling, and actually analysis on some of our water samples that we've collected.
Uh-huh.
And actually, it's with 2 different groups within DRI. One is looking at water chemistry, and the other is looking at genetics of microbial populations in water.
Okay, when you're looking at what's in the water, what are you looking for?
We're looking at trace metals and other water quality parameters.
Well, there's two main issues that we are concerned about when you're looking at water analysis. One is to make sure that from a safe drinking water perspective that the water that we have here in the valley is safe. Mm-hmm. But another thing is by looking at some of the trace metals and the chemistry, you can tell where the water came from and what the flow paths might be. So we're trying to understand some of that as well. So,
from what I've been taught, our water goes from east to west from the Mount Charleston area, the Spring Mountains, and it heads towards Tacoma, Shoshone, and Death Valley. Mm. So it's like a downward flow through our basin.
I think in the Pahrump Valley that's pretty accurate. We don't have anything necessarily to say other than that right now. But there are questions raised as to exactly where some of the flow paths are in the valley and which part of Mount Charleston or the Spring Mountains come into the Pahrump Valley. Does some of it go back towards Ash Meadows and Amargosa Valley and Crystal. And so we have a lot of questions we'd like to. Water is important to us in the desert,
Oh,
and
much.
we're trying to learn a lot more.
Yeah.
We have a lot of ideas that people have about water resources, the amount of water we have, where the water's flowing. But as we get into the water rights, water law, water conflicts issues, it's best for us to have good data. And that's really where Levi comes in. He's our real water science guru here. So.
Yeah, and presently the town of Pahrump is spending some money on for this folks for the theme park to investigate if it's feasible to put that here, and that would have an impact on the water level too, because you'd be drawing out from wells for that, for different purposes, for the cooling, for misting, for sanitation purposes. So hopefully those people will come to us, come to you.
Well, we sure would like to talk to him about it, and of course the Water District is a fairly new organization. Levi and I work with the Water District as well. We mentioned this as the Nuclear Waste Office, but Levi's also our Natural Resource Manager for the county. I wear the hat of part-time General Manager for the Water District. Water is important to everything that we do around here. We have some problems in the Pahrump Basin, and Levi might want to talk more about the facts of water levels, water resources, pumpage, that type of thing. But bottom line is we have a lot more water rights, a lot more potential uses than we have actual water to spread around. And so those issues are going to have to be resolved, and that's where we hope the Water District can get involved with conservation, with some of the other things to help every drop of water go as far as it can.
Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to just mention that one of the other contributing factors to the complexity of all this is that we have 3 counties and 2 states in one water basin, which, makes for more challenges. Like, for example, the proposed solar plant on Charleston View is on the California side,
But it's
in
within
our
our
water
basin,
basin.
yes.
Yeah.
So it's sharing our water, but it has a different set of water laws that apply to the use
Right.
of that water. So
Yeah.
it does add to the complexity.
It does.
Yeah, so someone is going to have to watch over that to see. Would that be the Water District then?
Well, I'm
Hoping?
We don't have any authority in California.
no.
But,
But
someone
we
has to
can-
be there to
Yeah,
tap us on the shoulder.
and say, hey, wait a minute,
Yeah.
this is our water basin here, and I think it's important to at least be there, like for the scoping period,
Right, exactly.
to let them know if they
Have-
don't already.
Have knowledgeable people there at these meetings to understand what they're saying and
Yeah.
raise the red flag at the proper times.
Right,
Yes,
because
yeah.
it will affect our basin. It has to.
So, and then Levi, you're going to, we're at, Daryl was saying earlier that we're sort of at status quo as far as the water levels right now because of the economy.
Actually, you have to look at a couple different things. And one is you have to look at the short-term trends, but you also have to look at the long-term trends in water levels. And based on water usage, we know that from the early 1900s to 2000 or so, we know that water levels or water usage went way up, peaking in the late 60s for irrigation. That's when they were growing cotton
Alfalfa.
And alfalfa,
and other things here. And then the irrigation has declined, but domestic use and pumpage by the utilities has increased a little bit. But as a whole, water usage is down from what it was in the 60s and 70s. So we've also, the Nuclear Waste Office technical staff has been measuring water levels around the valley since the late 90s, and we've seen areas in Pahrump where water levels are coming up, and we've also seen areas where they're declining, where they're going down. And it seems to be related partially to recharge on the northeast part of the valley up near the Spring Mountains,
Okay.
as well as heavier groundwater usage in other areas.
Do we have very heavy groundwater usage? And where would that be? Would that be like Utilities Inc. Wells sucking up the water?
What we know,
Lakeside?
what we know based on the data we have is that water levels in the northeast part of the valley seem to be coming up.
Okay.
And water levels in the southern part of the valley and the western part of the valley seem to be dropping. And in some areas, it's as much as a foot a year, based on the data we have, water level declines. And somewhat smaller than that, recharge or water level increases in the northeast part of the valley.
At some level, people tend to look at the valley as kind of a bathtub, but really it's more complicated than that. And you have to look at the geology, the types of soils that are in the valley. Your gravel and coarse sand, the water moves through fairly quickly and easily.
Right.
You get into the tight soils down in the bottom of the valley, and water doesn't move through it very fast. So even if there's water in other parts of the valley, they're pumping more in some areas, and some areas have a lot of domestic wells in a very small area. We've got some spots in the valley where we have, several hundred domestic wells in a fairly small area, and those tend to be in the flat part of the bottom of the valley, and I think maybe that's where some of the water levels are dropping, because we have tight soils and fairly heavy pumpage there.
I live in the valley floor area, and in our section, I think it's the second highest number of domestic wells in the whole valley in a section. So it's definitely declining there. I've been there 33 years, and it's gone down about a foot a year for 33 years. So.
Yeah, I have the clay soils where I live in, but for some reason the flow was rather well when you folks put the well down the street from it. When I looked, hey, who's putting the well down there? And I just happened to go to your office. I asked one of the secretaries, well, Cheryl.
It's a monitoring well.
And she says, I'll tell you who put the well in. Levi, Jamie.
Levi did it.
Even though there's clay soils there, they seem to produce a lot of water.
Yeah,
that's
so
what we found.
I'm real happy with that.
We pumped our test well over there too.
Yeah, because I have clay. It's for the house, so it's not setting on poof dirt. But the clay is not stopping the water from flowing also. So
and it's not real high density there either. I mean,
no,
it's
no, not at all. No,
it's got a lot to do with it.
Yeah, so for the moment, I'm happy with that. That's one thing I'm happy about.
So we're trying to get more science, trying to get more data. We're drilling some wells. Levi's drilled several wells in the Pahrump Valley as well as throughout Amargosa and up in the Beatty area. How many wells have you drilled so far for the nuclear waste and groundwater program, Levi?
Between the two programs combined, it would be 54 wells.
So we've
God,
done quite a bit of water well work, and these are not in typical. We don't pump water; these are monitoring wells typically. We are doing those to get data. We learn the geology of the soils in the area when we drill by taking samples. We do water chemistry from the water we find. We do sometimes pumpage tests to see what the water flows and stuff through the area can be. And then we do the water chemistry to understand what the water quality is and where the potential water movement is coming from.
And at some point in time, would I be able to access those samples from those wells in a timely fashion?
All the data is on our
That's a
website.
great
I know.
But finding it might be more difficult if you don't know what you're looking for and how to find
Exactly,
it.
yes.
It might be good to mention that we are looking, Nye County Water District is looking at an abandoned well program also, and that may identify some wells that we can use for monitoring wells.
We're trying to identify those from an issue in regards to contamination types of issues, because in many cases, everyone in Nye County pretty much gets their water from underground water wells.
Yep.
So contamination is one of the concerns that we have. We have a program where we're cooperating with in Nevada Department of Environmental Protection. What's it called? The Source Water Protection?
The Community Source Water Protection Plan.
But basically we're looking at where we're pumping water, what the quality is, and what the potential source of contamination are, so that we can potentially deal with those. One of the areas of potential quick contamination could be an abandoned well. That's something
if it's
to
open,
identify and pull into that, because for some reason there are some people who see a hole in the ground and want to dump something in it. I don't know where that mindset comes from, but I don't think they take that next step to understand that somebody's drinking the water at the bottom of that hole. So.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, but decades ago, maybe the 60s and 70s, that would be the way to get rid of a lot of your
Oil,
waste. In the Midwest, if you're pumping acid, oil waste, and things like that, they used to drill real deep wells and
Deep injection
forget about
wells.
it. Then all of a sudden, wait a minute, you can't do that.
Yeah.
You know, the Okalala aquifer
The Ogallala, yeah, that's in the
is really
central
messed
part
up.
of the U.S., yeah.
Yeah, that's really messed up in the southern part over by the Pantex plant over there down Amarillo. That you could read about it, but there's a lot of issues over there. Things that were just thrown into the ground and then went into the aquifer.
water table.
Yes, yeah. But you got to be careful. You know,
Yeah.
things that you did 30, 40 years ago, we're paying for it now.
Well, I think the one thing we can say is how important the water is to all of us.
Yes.
And we need water for our, domestic needs. We need water for our commercial needs. We have to have jobs too. You mentioned the potential fairgrounds park.
So hopefully they will ask the correct people, the water board, your office, for the scientists to make the proper decisions on that.
Yeah. Hopefully they will, but is there anything in place to require them to come to us right now?
At this stage right now, the water district doesn't have any ordinances in place that restrict what anyone can do. The laws that are here are through the state engineer's office. Or if someone does something on public lands, they have to go through NEPA, the National Environmental Protection Act, which would address things like the water resources and any impact it might have on the plants and animal life in the area. So, but on private lands, if people have water rights available, then today there's not a whole lot of restrictions on what they can do with it.
Right.
And from what Levi was showing with the pumpage data, he mentioned that the pumpage peaked in the late 60s at around 40,000 acre feet per year. Well, at that time, the water levels were dropping very rapidly in the area. And one of the things that impacted that was endangered species and the loss, some of the springs stopped flowing in the area and stuff like that. So we know that we're getting closer to being in balance. We don't have, the state engineer and the USGS have put some data out on what they think the perennial yield of the basin is, how much water is available of actual wet water that you can use. And it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 20,000 acre feet a year for the Pahrump Basin, 162. We know when they peaked out at pumping 40,000 acre feet a year, they were dropping very rapidly.
Right.
We know now we're pumping somewhere in the 20,000 acre feet per year range. And the water level's still dropping in some areas, but it's rising in some areas. So overall, we think we're fairly close in balance. But you have to go back, and the water rights and stuff were given out back when they were pumping at the peak year. So there actually is around 60,000 acre feet of water rights in the valley.
63, I think, or something.
There's
like that.
also 12,000 plus domestic wells. Those wells don't have water rights, but they have a inherent usage of
Domestic,
2 acre
yeah.
feet per year allocation. So you add those together and you're up in the 80,000 acre feet per year range. So we
Right.
know the numbers don't add up. If we've got 20,000 acre feet of water and 80,000 acre feet of claims on that water, then we have a challenge ahead of us.
Yeah.
Conservation and other types of smart water usage is important to us.
Yeah, and people may have questions about why there's so many water rights, over and above what we think our recharge is. And it was largely due to the Desert Land Entry Act, which was in I believe, the late 50s, early 60s. And what they would do is if you went out and farmed a piece of ground, like 160 acres, you could go out and farm it and prove up the water, and then that's how much water the state would give you. So what happened is they expected a lot of failure because it's a desert, but instead they had some really good farmers come out here that did a really good job of farming and were able to prove up that water. And so the state gave it to them, and that's why there's more than what we actually have recharging the basin.
And we do know that just because someone has a allocation of water, it doesn't mean it all gets used every year.
Right.
For instance, the domestic wells, our expectation is our estimates are that on average people are using about half an acre foot per year right now, even though they have a 2 acre foot
Right.
allocation from the state engineer. That's one of the reasons in the water district we were wanting to do some voluntary metering so that we can get some better data.
Yes,
That raised a lot of
yeah,
But like I
issues.
said, at this stage, we're not doing anything trying to force anyone to do anything. But as we mentioned before, the numbers don't add up. And our
Right.
best decision-making comes when we have good data and facts to make our decisions on.
right.
I think we can all agree with that. So I think it's important for us to get good data. That's why Levi's group is doing the water well drilling. They're trying to understand what the water levels are doing. We're cooperating with USGS and the Desert Research Institute on scientific studies. We understand some of these other groups are doing some work on precipitation and recharge and other types of things. So, like I said, we're working very closely with those groups, with the State Engineer's Office. We're doing some cooperative wells in Amargosa with the State Engineer's Office. So we're trying to get good data.
Yep.
So that when the tough decisions do have to be made, that the public can understand what's happening. We can have an open and public process and hopefully get to some good
Yeah.
decision making.
And I'd just like to mention too that there is more scientific investigation going on in the region over in the Tacoma and Shoshone area, which you guys already know about. But the Amargosa Conservancy has hired a hydraulic engineering firm to come out and test the geochemistry and try to get an idea of the flow down there, because that's all tied into this. That's the low end. So the more data we have from down there, the better we'll understand the whole region.
So if I throw some red food dye in there today, it'll
It's gonna
probably
come
make
up
it
in
up by you,
Tacoma.
but
Yeah.
5 years from now.
Well, at least we have an expectation that some of the water from the Pahrump Valley flows that direction, but also water in the Ash Meadows area
Flows that direction
flows that
too.
direction as well. So how much is going down there from the various areas?
Right.
And because there are endangered species involved, we have a lot of people who want to get their nose in the decision-making process here. And a lot of federal agencies, a lot of environmental groups, all want to be involved in this process. They don't,
Could you imagine what it would be like if we didn't have the Endangered Species Act, because Preferred Equities would have had
Another huge subdivision out
up in
there.
Ash Meadows?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we really be worried about the water levels then. So thank you, Little Pupfish.
Yeah, I mean, because really, it does help to slow things down at
Yes,
least, so
yeah.
that we don't get carried away and use more than we should.
So this very high pumpage back in the 60s was due to the purely agriculture.
Agriculture.
Almost
Almost
all
all of
agriculture.
Okay. How does someone irrigate a field in Pahrump? Like I see over at the by the dairy, just turn on the water and just flood the whole field? Was that the process, or was it like spraying with the wheels?
In the early days, they all flood irrigated because
So it
they
was
didn't.
probably flood irrigation for this?
More than likely.
Okay.
When I first moved here, that's pretty
That's
much
why those huge
predominantly.
ag wells were there?
Yeah,
Okay.
it was almost all flood irrigation.
So you get a little picture on where the water went and how much of it.
Mm-hmm.
So the entire area to be utilized for the crops was
Was flooded,
Yeah.
literally, yeah. And nowadays, they have the center pivots, which are a lot more
Everett
efficient.
also has those. You could see
Yeah, we
those
have them
off of
here,
Google
too.
Map.
Mhm.
Where do we have them?
We have them on the Peckstein Ranch off of Irene, just north of the dairy.
Oh,
There's,
okay, cool.
Two
Yeah.
big pivots out there. So, yeah, and it's a lot, it doesn't water the corners, but I guess they still get credit through the state engineer. So it actually saves the water that would be used in the corners, and it's a lot more efficient than flooding,
Oh, yeah.
so.
I have a problem with the flooding when I just see that.
Oh,
That's,
yeah.
Oh, my God.
it's,
'Cause
it's
you're-
pretty wasted just in regards to the, but that's
so is-
one of the, there's pros and cons to different types of water law.
Like
Our-
proving up your water
Our water
rights.
law here is such that it's called prior appropriation. So kind of first in time, first in right. So the first farmers
Oh,
here
that's
got the
right.
water.
Yeah.
And, but the way the law is set up is you have to prove it up on a periodic basis. And there's been some claims that leads to wastage, because if people don't use that water, they're gonna lose it.
Right,
Right.
exactly.
And it's a fairly valuable water right, property right that they have, and they want to make sure that they can maintain that and maybe have it for their own use in the future for sale, because it's a very valuable
So there should be a change to that. I personally think, I know a group of us years ago did get a change to the water law, and that was that the state engineer had to take into consideration drought conditions. If you're filing an extension and you say that there's a drought going on, I don't want to farm right now because it's not good to do it right now, he has to take that into consideration in granting an extension of time. So that helped a little bit, but you know.
And I know there were some changes made to the water law this last legislative session. I haven't had an opportunity to go through that in great detail yet.
Actually.
But it does have some changes that might have a very significant impact on the Pahrump Valley as well.
Right.
And maybe that's a topic for a future
Yeah.
program, John, is some of the
That might take a
water
whole
law
program.
changes, because that would probably take a whole program. And
So yeah, let's think about that, and also the folks out there, if you have some issues that you want to address, you could talk to us, and we'll look at that, and we'll have future programs on that also, and we'll have pictures and graphs to better show you exactly what we're talking about also in the future. So we hope on a continual basis we'll talk a little bit about more this important water issues that we have here, and other issues that Daryl takes care of with the
okay, well, you mentioned
NWRPL.
something in the newspaper. There's something recently in there about the Nevada test site that might want to mention, something called the Assembly Joint Resolution 5 that was passed by the state legislature this last session, that has basically asked the Nevada test site folks to work with Nye County, Clark County, and the state of Nevada on water resource and water contamination issues, because as we're looking at potential water shortages and stuff in the area, there is potentially some water available on the test site that's not contaminated. Nye County has applied through the state engineer process for those water rights, and they were actually denied by the state engineer because the Nevada test site would not allow us access to get to that water. Even though they're not using it themselves, they denied us access. So it's definitely something that needs to be discussed in the future, and luckily the state legislature weighed in to support us on that.
Okay, great. We're in our last minute already. Well, that went by fast.
Yeah, it really did.
So like I said, if you have the questions, ask any of us, or call the office over there at 727-7727, and with questions about water issues, about anything that Daryl has. You want to talk about Yucca Mountain too? We'll get Gary for
we'll bring
those
Gary
programs.
over for another
Gary
time.
Hollis, because he wants to come out here and talk about that. But Daryl, Levi, Donna, myself, we're all concerned about water, and there's many more of us. So the Water Board, NWRPO, and so just ask. You got the questions? Please ask them. And then remember, we repeat on Sunday mornings at 6:30. If you can't sleep, we'll be on in the morning. We're on YouTube also. So if you want to see this show on YouTube, you can access us through that. So everyone, thank you for watching. Thank you, Jeff, and we'll see you again next week. All right, good night.